Good evening. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good. How are you?
I'm well. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mine says Stephanie Boda, but I'm Alice. That's my sister's.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Who's that coming in from the iPhone? iPhone guest.
It might be Chantel Shan.
Yeah, that's who it is. All right. Let me go through these names one at a time real quick. Jayla Armour. Are you on here yet? Laura Blackstock, I see you. Just heard from Alice Bota.
Mm-hmm.
Adiva Brown.
Here.
Right. Chanel Burrows. Chanel Burrows. Megan Carter. I see
Here.
your name up here. Okay. Samara Daniels. I see your name up here as well. Jayla Davis. Is Jayla Davis here? Nope. Kelandria Dodd. I feel like I just saw. Yeah, I see your name. Sydney Graham. Sydney Graham. See, Jayla Davis just signed in. I got you, Miss Davis. No, Sydney Graham. Sydney Hatmaker. I thought I see you.
Here.
Chloe Jones. Chloe Jones. Jada Lanier. Ashley Little. I thought I saw you sign in somewhere.
Here.
All right, I see you. Kiana Littlejohn.
Here.
Cameron McCain.
Here.
Lastacia Miller. Jermaine Mitchum. All right. Anaya Roberts.
Here.
Right. And I got Chantel Shan already. Courtney Shannon. Nope. Jaquan Smith. I thought I saw you sign in.
Here.
All right. Daphne Smith Sanders. Smith Sanders. Jeremy Vick. And Tavis Williams. I saw you sign in as well. All right. How's everybody doing this evening? Y'all good? Don't all speak at once, man.
Good.
Yes, sir. We're good.
Cool.
Okay.
Did everyone understand the lecture I posted? Could you see it? Could you hear it? Was it understandable? Any questions before I kind of reiterate some of the points again? Hello?
It was
No
okay.
It was okay. Okay. Anyone have any questions regarding the reading or anything? No? Okay. All right. So what we're going to talk about is those first two chapters you were assigned. and that was chapters 1 and 2, the introduction to criminal procedure, and then the sources of criminal procedure. Of course, the introduction was just to talk about what criminal procedure is, the difference between criminal procedure and criminal law itself. When we talk about criminal procedure, well, let's start off with law. When we talk about criminal law, that's pretty much the definition of what we can and can't do as citizens, what's illegal and what is legal, what's legal and illegal. When we talk about criminal procedure, we're talking about how, let Ms. Jones in. We're talking about the rules that apply to the system and how the system must treat us. So, in other words, what law enforcement can and can't do when it comes to arresting us, what they must do before they arrest us or search us. Then later on, we're going to talk in other chapters about what the court system, how the court system has to treat us when it comes to due process. So criminal procedure is about the rules that govern a machine. So anytime you hear me talk about the machine, I'm talking about the criminal court system or the criminal justice system. So the Constitution of the United States pretty much lays out what the system can and can't do. So it's there to, it's about protecting you and defining what the system can and can't do when it comes to you. So it's about citizen and law enforcement interaction and citizen and criminal justice system interaction. So what governs that? Of course, so that's the difference between criminal law and criminal procedure. One governs us as individuals, what we can and can't do. The other governs the system itself. So, of course, as we go through the semester, we're going to be essentially balancing security, and security is all about protecting the system, protecting us, from dangerous people, because no matter what we talk about, what we say about law enforcement, there are people that we don't want to encounter, right? There are people that we're all scared to have to deal with, and we would rather call law enforcement to handle them than try to handle it ourselves, right? So that's what we call the security interest, the interest in protecting the public from bad people and bad things, right? That's the interest in security, and of course that in security you also talk about law enforcement and their ability to catch the bad guy, to investigate and actually catch some bad guys, right? But we're always weighing that security interest with our personal rights, and that's your right to autonomy, to walk and talk and live as you please without being bothered. So as long as you're not bothering anybody with the way that you live, of course, we all want to be left alone, right? That's when we talk about the Constitution, especially the First Amendment, and then we talk about the Fourth Amendment. Those are pretty much amendments about getting to say what we want and then being left alone. In our house, in our person, and in our personal effects. So you're always weighing those two interests. So there's the interest of protecting the public as a whole from the bad guys and the cops' ability to catch the bad guys versus all of our individual interest in being free and autonomous and not being bothered by law enforcement or the system. So in everything we talk about, there's in criminal procedure, there's always that balance. We're trying to balance societal security interests versus the interest in protecting our constitutional rights. So it's security interest versus rights. Of course, the objectives of criminal procedure, of course, is to find a fair place in that balance. Of course, there's certain things that are going to be more important when we're determining how that balance is going to go, right? Criminal procedure, criminal procedure seeks to achieve a number of other important objectives: accuracy, efficiency, public respect, and of course, at this point in time, the way the system's going, of course, there's not a lot of respect for the court system because there are a lot of inaccuracies or things that are just not fair. They'll do one thing here and then do another thing for someone else. And when we start calling the court system out on its double standards, of course, that the double standards, that's the court not doing a good job of promoting respect for itself. So that's what a lot of these protests are about, is we're calling this stuff out, right? Um, so other objectives, of course, fairness, equality, effective legal representation. So meaning if you have to encounter the criminal justice system, making sure you have effective legal representation, popular participation, and that's when you get to be a juror. And I'll talk about that in later chapters, the importance of registering to vote, because registering to vote in most jurisdictions also means that you're going to be, hold on, let me admit these people. That also means that you're going to be able to serve as a juror. So, if you don't think your vote counts in an election, I'll tell you where your vote does count. When you're one of 12 people having to make a decision in the jury room, right? So when you vote guilty or not guilty, that vote counts because it has to be unanimous either way, right? So how you vote definitely counts. So if you don't think it counts in a general election, there's no electoral college in a jury room, right? It's your vote and that's it. No one represents you but you. So we'll talk about that and the importance of serving, being a juror. The criminal justice process, of course, we process through a number of stages. We talk about the investigation process, so there are rules that apply to the investigation, what cops can and can't do, if they're going to call you in for questioning, what they can and can't do, having to get a warrant to do certain things, to arrest you. So that's another phase, the arrest. Then once we get to arrest, there are certain appearances, how the court system has to treat you. And then we get to the trial itself, where a lot of rights kind of kick in as well. So that's what we're going to be processing through this whole semester. So sources of criminal procedure. You have several sources. Of course, you have the United States Constitution, which is essentially the Constitution itself is what creates our government. And not only did it create our government, but it also within itself told the government what it can and can't do. And of course, through several amendments and things being added to it, it also added some things that, kind of furthered what it can, kind of further expressed and outlined and I guess what I say, defined what the government can and can't do. Then first it only applied to the federal government, but then it was through incorporation, it was expanded to also include state and local law enforcement. So through the entire Constitution, the first 10 amendments, and then what I call those post-Civil War amendments, that added the states into it as well, saying there's certain things as a state, that essentially what it said is that this Constitution also applies to the states and what they do to people. So you have the Constitution, you have judicial decisions, you have state constitutions, which of course can never abridge the federal Constitution or shorten the federal Constitution, but they can strengthen it. You have common law tradition that comes over from, when we say common law, that's the old law that comes over from England. You have legislative statutes, so sometimes the legislature will have some say on what they think a law should be or what they think the criminal procedure should be. Then you have court rules, and you have agency regulations, and then model codes. And model codes are nothing more than when the smart people in law, the lawyers, the people in academia and judicial officials get together and say, you know what, this is what it should be. It doesn't necessarily mean it's what it's going to be, but it's like their model code where they write it out, and states can, different jurisdictions can choose whether or not to adopt it. And by adopting it, that's when they say, we're going to make this the law here. So we have the structure of the federal court system. The federal court system was created by Article 3 of the Constitution. We talk about they call them Article 3 courts that created the hierarchy of courts. Now, of course, at the beginning of our nation, when the Constitution was put there, of course, we didn't have as many states. There were only 13 states at the time, right? And we weren't as highly populated. So, of course, the court system started off being a little bit smaller. You essentially had your federal court, trial courts, and everything went straight to the United States Supreme Court. Of course, as America got larger, we had to include some more courts in there. Every state, different jurisdictions had federal courts, and we had to now include a level of courts called the circuit appeals court. So we had to have something to kind of screen things before they went to the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court couldn't handle everything in that volume of cases once our population grew. So of course, on the state system, you have the state trial courts, which we call district. I'm sorry, on the federal system. I'm sorry, we have the federal trial courts, which are the district court, which is the district court level. From there, you can appeal to a circuit appellate court, depending on what circuit you lie in. And for your information, North Carolina is in the 4th Circuit, so it's like North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia. I think is it Maryland? It's like 5 states, but just remember, I'm not gonna tell you every state, but I will tell you we are in the 4th Circuit. North Carolina has 3 federal judicial districts within the state. We have the middle, the east, the western, the middle, and the eastern. The Western District Court is held in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's right downtown, and then it is a separate courthouse from the state courthouse. We'll get to the state later. And then you have the Middle District, which is you're sitting on it in Greensboro, North Carolina. It's right downtown, across the street from the state courthouse. And then we also have a second satellite Middle District courthouse in Winston-Salem. I don't know why they did that, but we got hold on. We got 2 federal district courts in the Middle District. So then on the Eastern District, we have it's in Raleigh, North Carolina. So those are your 3 judicial districts on the federal side. Then we talk about the state hierarchy. You have like district court. Of course, you have courts below that, and now I'm just talking about generally. But in North Carolina, you have the magistrate's court, district court. From there, you go up to superior court, where felonies and higher cases are handled. And sometimes you can appeal on the criminal side from district court to superior court, where you can get what we call a trial de novo or a new trial. Then from there, if you want to appeal, from there you go to the North Carolina Court of Appeals. Then from there, if you want to appeal it further, you go to the state Supreme Court. If it is a federal question, a question of some type of federal right that's been denied or violated, if the United States Supreme Court sees fit and decides to hear it, and they grant what they call a writ of certiorari, then the United States Supreme Court may hear the case. So we're going to talk about several cases that actually started in state Supreme Courts, and they started off in state trial courts. And they ended up being appealed all the way to the federal Supreme Court, where the federal Supreme Court decided to hear it. So I think one of the cases we go over next class with the Terry case, where we talk about the Terry stops and stop and frisk, that started off in Ohio in the state court system, and it got appealed all the way up, and the Supreme Court of the United States said, you know what, this is serious enough for us to take a gander at and make some law out of it. So that's how the hierarchy goes on the state and federal side. Then you have what they call precedent. Once a court, a higher court, especially appeals court or a Supreme Court, makes a decision, it then becomes precedent. What precedent means is this is the standard or the rule we're going to apply from here on out in cases with the same facts. So we use stare decisis, and that's just the principle of using a holding from a case, and it's now going to be used in every other case. It's just like it. So when we talked about efficiency in the court system, it's not just efficiency, but it's efficiency, and it's like what's a good word for it? Predictability. So it helps us, and it helps us represent our clients, and it helps you, even whether you have an attorney or not, know what's going on if there's precedent, because you can say, well, this is what happened in an earlier case, so we can expect the same thing to happen in this case. This is how the court's going to see it. So so it's all about predictability as well. So that's chapter 1, with just a general introduction to criminal procedure. Let's talk very briefly about chapter 2. Hold on. Chapter 2, we just reiterate the sources of criminal procedure. Once again, we talk about the Constitution being the supreme law of the land. So the U.S. Constitution, the U.S. Supreme Court. So you got the Constitution and legislative law. Because the Constitution is technically a legislative kind of creation. So a group of lawmakers that were representing their states, or at the time, I guess it would be. I guess they were officially states, but they were, I guess, colonies at the time. Banded together and they created the Constitution together. So it would kind of count as a legislative made law, the Constitution. But then you also have legislative acts or laws that come out of the legislature as well that can determine what criminal procedure is as well. From there, you also have judicial decisions. So one thing that the Constitution did is it created our government, and it created the three branches of our government: the judicial, the legislative, and then, of course, the executive. Of course, in criminal procedure, the main thing we're going to talk about is the judicial and the power of the judicial branch. The judicial branch was given the power of what we call judicial review. And what that means is they can review the acts of both the executive and the legislative branch to determine whether they were in line with the Constitution, or what we call were they constitutional. So that's the main power that the judicial branch has. In that power, and there was a case, Marbury v. Madison, where that power was kind of laid out, where they said that this is what the judicial branch's job is, to now oversee the acts of both the legislature and the executive branch, and to determine whether their acts are constitutional. So in that power, that's what gave the court system the power to now review cases and, of course, and say what the law is, or say whether or not it's constitutional. The one thing about laws is normally when they're made, they're not very well written. There's always something left out, and they're kind of they talk about issues, but they don't explain, well, what happens if this situation happens. So it kind of naturally has to, the way the process goes, someone has to be accused of something. They have to go to trial, be convicted of it, and say, hold on, that was wrong. This isn't fair. I'm going to appeal. And then the courts have to look at that instance and say, and determine whether or not it's constitutional based on those facts. So that's always how the process goes. Someone has to be accused of breaking the law. Then they, of course, have to be on the wrong side of it. They have to be convicted, and then they have to get mad and appeal. And then it goes all the way to the top. And then that's how the court creates precedent. They say, well, in this situation, with this particular type of case and this particular set of facts, this is how the law is going to go. So in the future, now you know how the law should go. So you know what's constitutional and what isn't. So when we talk about criminal procedure, some cop always did something, arrested someone, searched someone. Then the person said, well, they didn't have a warrant. That was unconstitutional. So then it goes up to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court gives guidance on what it's going to be from here on out. That's how it goes. So that's how judicial law is made. And that's what we call the law. I mean, law is created through judicial decisions. Then you have state Supreme Courts, which work the same way, where they determine what is legal and illegal, or constitutional and unconstitutional, based upon the state's constitution. Now, as I said before, the state's constitution can never abridge or weaken the federal constitution. It can strengthen it. So there's some places, in some states, they can make the Fourth Amendment requirement for a search even stronger. But they can't make it weaker than what it would be based upon the federal constitution. State courts work the same way. A trial, someone appeals, they get mad, they appeal, and they take it up to the state Supreme Court. And the state Supreme Court decides what the law is going to be, and it becomes precedent. Depending on what type of case it is, it can go from the state Supreme Court and go to the federal Supreme Court, but it has to be something that the federal Supreme Court is willing to hear. It has to be a federal question of constitutionality, and the Supreme Court of the United States has to decide whether or not they want to hear. So 4 out of 9 of the Supreme Court justices have to vote that it's important enough to hear, and they'll hear the case. So that's what we call a rule of 4, where it doesn't have to be 5-4, but at least 4 out of the 9 have to say, well, we'll vote to at least hear it. And then they grant a writ of certiorari, and they essentially hear the case from that point on. That's how the Supreme Court gets cases that come from the state courts. Let's see what else. Then we have like state and local rules of criminal procedure, where the state legislatures kind of define what is going to be the criminal procedure. So you have laws that are made that way. We talked about model penal code, and model codes of criminal procedure, where they create, where the smart people get together and decide what it should be. Doesn't necessarily mean it's what it's going to be, because it's, different jurisdictions have to figure out whether or not they're going to adopt that or adopt some of it and do away with the other parts of it. So every state essentially has its own sovereign jurisdiction to determine what's going to be the law. So from state to state, even from federal district to so there's some things that are constitutional, or that there's a certain law that may apply a certain way in the Fourth Circuit that applies to our 5 states in the Fourth Circuit, but it may not go that way in the 10th Circuit, right? So if it doesn't get all the way up to the Supreme Court, and sometimes the Supreme Court has to go all the way up there for the Supreme Court to say, okay, this is what's going to apply everywhere. But let's say if the appeal doesn't get all the way to the federal Supreme Court, then sometimes that means that jurisdiction in that circuit, they're going to apply the law the way they see fit in that circuit. So from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, from circuit to circuit, things can be different. So criminal procedure is not just about what's legal and what's not legal, what's constitutional and what's not constitutional. You also have to know a measure of civics. So that's why we, I think they offer definitely in political science, what's that, state and local government. You have to understand how sovereignty works, how North Carolina, even though we're in Greensboro, North Carolina, we're probably about 30, 40 miles away from the Virginia border. But when we cross over the border, different laws apply, because that's called sovereignty from border to border. And you have to learn how there's a contract between all 50 states. So it actually is very corporate. So you think of the Constitution as almost being a corporate charter that says how the 50 states are going to act and treat each other, and how there's going to be governance. And then each state has its right to figure out what's going to be the law within its borders. And so from state to state, you might have different things going on. So that's how it works. So you do have to kind of know a little bit about civics. And surprisingly, a lot of attorneys who practice law really don't know civics and sovereignty and how stuff like that works. They don't know how treaties work and stuff like that. But most people, so that's why when people come to court and they argue give the sovereigntist arguments, a lot of times the judges are ill-equipped to understand what they're saying. But me, I got to be a professor. I got to be a little bit smarter, because I get to teach you guys. I realize like a lot of people in the criminal justice system that got law degrees, don't know crap about sovereignty and how things work. When it comes from the governance, from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So let me see. I don't want to run too long. Talked about development of due process. The last half of the 20th century witnessed the nationalization, or what legal scholars refer to as the constitutionalization of criminal procedure. It involves interpreting the 14th Amendment due process clause to extend most of the protections of the Bill of Rights to the states. So when we talk about like specifically the 13th Amendment, I call those the post-slavery amendments. So so what happened, of course, when the Constitution was made, we are an HBCU, so I know pretty much everybody in this class is Black. But that's another thing you got to understand. Historically, when the Constitution was made, it didn't include millions of people who were here that were slaves, and they were considered property. So it was made, but it wasn't necessarily originally made to apply to everyone. But once the slaves were free, then different provisions had to be made for it to now apply to everyone. Because post-Civil War, the issue was whether or not the states were going to honor the fact that the federal government had freed these Black people. So in doing that, they had to come up with different amendments. For one, they had to outlaw slavery. Now, did they really outlaw slavery? No, they didn't. I know everyone's actually seen the 13th Amendment, the movie, the 13th, the documentary, but no, they did not outlaw slavery. But they changed the form in which slavery could be done. So in other words, they kind of really created mass incarceration by creating the 13th Amendment, which said you cannot be a slave unless, air quotes, you are being punished after being found guilty of a crime. At that point, then you can become property of the government or the jurisdiction in which you were found guilty, and they can do with you what they see fit because you're being punished. So it didn't end slavery; it just changed the form. So that's what the 13th Amendment did.
Would you
and
consider
then
is that considered like indentured servitude?
Indentured servitude kind of came over, is very old, because actually a lot of the first slaves in this country, before they started shipping people over, were, some of them were even white people, people that owed people money. Indentured servitude means that you owe me something and you're going to work it off. Once you work off your debt, you're free to do what you want to do. That was different than the type of slavery, what I call the capitalistic slavery that America practiced when they started bringing free labor over here. So of course that's different. So it's not, so the criminal justice system isn't necessarily in what we call indentured servitude. Now there is the idea of restitution, right? But considering what a person earns while they're working in prison, they can never really repay restitution. The prison system is more about punishing than it is really making people whole for the most part. So it's not really, I wouldn't compare it to indentured servitude. But that was thank you for that question, Ms. Dodd. But so then you have the 14th Amendment. So, and we learn about the 5th Amendment, which promises due process, but it only applies to the federal government. Later on, after the 13th Amendment, then you have the 14th Amendment, which says that that same due process promise from the 5th Amendment is now also going to apply to the states. So the 13th and 14th Amendment. Then later on, you have like the 15th Amendment. I want to say the 15th Amendment. I think the fifth is one of those amendments to repeal prohibition. And then there was another amendment that gave, I think it was the 15th Amendment that gave females the right to vote. So a lot of those amendments that came, I call them the amendments in the teens, the teens, talk about the 13th, 14th, 15th, stuff like that, when they have teens on the end of them. A lot of those amendments were designed to keep the states from bullying kind of protected classes of people, of course, based upon race, the black people and women. So it's pretty much about giving them rights. Of course, then later on in 1964, you have the Voting Rights Act, which was not an amendment, but it was actually an act of Congress that made voting a matter of law. In other words, you couldn't keep anyone in any jurisdiction from voting, and it became a federal law. So right now, our right to vote isn't protected by the Constitution; it's protected by an act of Congress, the Civil Rights Act. That's kind of how the criminal justice system goes. It's how it works. So you kind of have to understand sovereignty and how that stuff works. Another thing I want you guys to understand, when we go and we look at cases, when we go through cases, nothing happens in a vacuum. When you look at these cases, before you read them, always look at the year of the case. So when you look at a case caption, it's always going to have the name of the case, like let's say Terry v. Ohio, and then in not in quotations but in parentheses, is then going to have the year that the case was heard. So Terry v. Ohio was a 1968 case. And we haven't got to it yet. That's the next chapter of your reading. But in every case you read, I always want you to look at the year, because the Supreme Court is making decisions, and they're issuing these rulings, but they're doing it during a time. That means it's not happening in a vacuum. Something is happening around them socially, politically, when they're making these decisions. So we all know what was going on around in the 1960s, right? The country was changing, and we had the civil rights movement. You also had a whole bunch of other subversive movements that the right-wing people didn't like. And of course, at that time in the 60s, especially once the Kennedys were pretty much X'd out, it pretty much became, what would I call it? I'm trying to think of the word, a conservative government. So you had conservative presidents that were appointing conservative Supreme Court justices. So you see, you have the Fourth Amendment, which was created way back in the 1700s when the country was created. But then remember, I said that the next way you create law is through cases where the courts interpret what the law means, what the Constitution is going to apply to. So what you have is this eroding of the Fourth Amendment. You have the Fourth Amendment that was created in the 1700s, but then you have cases afterwards, after that kind of create exceptions to the Fourth Amendment. We'll learn later on that the Fourth Amendment requires that before police search your home or search your person, they have to have a warrant, and that warrant has to be based on probable cause. So that means before they can kick your door down, they have to have a warrant. They have to have gone to a judge. They have to explain to the judge why they feel like kicking your door down or knocking and announcing and coming in your house and searching is just, and why, and it has to be based on probable cause. They have to tell the judge what they saw, what gave rise to their suspicion, and why they believe that something illegal is going on there. So what happened, that was the original law. But what happens in all these cases, you have the court creating exceptions. So here's the Fourth Amendment. Cops got to get a warrant. That's it. That's the bottom line. It's a red line test. But then you have these later cases that says, well, they don't have to get a warrant every time. We're gonna waive the warrant rule in this situation. Oh, we're also gonna waive the warrant rule in this situation. So by the time you have a whole bunch of cases, the Fourth Amendment isn't as strong as it used to be. So because you have all these exceptions that are created from Supreme Court rulings. So it's kind of withering away the Fourth Amendment. So I want you guys to pay attention to the Terry case in the Stop and Frisk chapter, and it's going to give you an idea of how the Supreme Court that was making a decision at a certain time based upon what was happening. And of course, you do know what the Supreme Court was made, the demographic of the Supreme Court in the 1960s, right? I don't think Thurgood Marshall wasn't there yet. I don't think he got there till, no, he was on that court. He was on that court, and I think he got in I want to say he was I want to say John F. Kennedy may have appointed him. But surprisingly, you're going to be, so if you look up the Terry case, and it'll tell you who the Supreme Court was, who was on the Supreme Court that heard that case and made that decision. Surprisingly, as much as we love Thurgood, he was on that court. We love him to death, right? He did great things in NAACP, but he also was a part of, and he voted for, and for the he voted yes on that case. He voted with the what's that? Not the dissent, but with everyone else. So he voted with the concurring opinion. And that case is pretty much one of the deadliest cases, the deadliest things that our Supreme Court's ever done. It literally led to what we call stop and frisk that exists now. If you think about all these black people that are getting pulled over by cops, getting stopped on the streets, getting roughed up and dying, that all came from that case. So that's why I want you not just to pay attention to, oh, this is what the case says, but know what was happening, know who was on the Supreme Court when the case was ruled, when it happened, and know the year. That'll let you know that. So law is also about history. Is there anyone in here that doesn't like history? By say something. Say, if you don't like history, just unmute yourself and say history sucks. Anybody not like history? Okay, that's good, because I don't know why you wouldn't like history, because if you don't pay attention to history, it's going to repeat itself, right? And history is nothing but more than like a soap opera, the soap opera of the world. If you can watch soap operas every day, you know what's going, you watch The Chi. Me and my wife watch The Chi. We watch different shows on TV, right? Ash Little, why you look at me like that? Like I can't watch The Chi. We be me and my wife be binge watching TV, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. But history is the same way. All history is a whole bunch of stories of crazy people that did crazy things. We're living in a time now. There's going to be a history. There's going to be a history book in the future that's going to talk about that from 2016 to 2021 when Donald Trump was president. That's literally, we're going to be laughed at 50 years from now because that man was our president. Now, I'm not here to impart my political views on you guys, but we're going to be laughed at. Like, you know how we look back in Nazi Germany now, like, how could they have put Hitler in office? People going to look at America like that. Nothing happens. These laws are not made in a vacuum. So the Supreme Court is doing stuff during a time. Something's going on around it. So nothing is in a vacuum. So I want you to remember that when you're looking at these cases as we go chapter to chapter. So every chapter is going to tell it. So even when we talk about the Miranda case and all this stuff, something's going on. I think we're not going to talk about selective. I already gave you guys a whole lecture on this stuff, so I'm not about to double that stuff up. Are there any questions or any comments right now? Say something, Ash Little. At least say I don't have a comment, because you over there shaking your head when I say I be watching The Shy.
I don't have a comment, sir.
Okay, good. She was judging me, y'all. It felt
I
real
was not
judgmental.
judging you.
Felt real like I can't watch The Shy.
I didn't
What?
say nothing.
She was like, Shy? Yeah, I be watching these.
Like,
Hey,
right.
we in the middle of a quarantine. I got all the little I got all of them. I got a Disney Plus.
Okay.
I got
I
Hulu.
watch it too.
I got Netflix. I got all of it, cause hey, we've been in the house, so I got to watch this stuff. But yes, but just know that none of this stuff that the Supreme Court does, none of these laws, none of these decisions come out of a vacuum. Something was happening. It happened in a time and a place. So that's why I always want you to know there's always, so history and law, and you guys cannot be criminal justice majors learning about this field and not understand history, and also not understand that you're living in history. Things are about to change in this country. Something's gonna happen, right? And you're living in it. It's unfortunate. Wish we could live in times when wasn't that much happening. COVID is history. Matter of fact, I mean, a little bit more than 100 years ago, there was an outbreak, the Spanish flu, right? And that was in 1918. I think it ran from like a year, where they were actually living under the same conditions. They had to walk around with masks on and stuff like that. So this is not new. So it's like a 100-year cycle, right? This has happened before. Hold on, Daphne trying to get back in. I'm let her in. But yeah, this isn't new, right? This has happened before, and really, people back then were way nastier than we are now. At least we got running water everywhere, and we can wash our behind, wash our hands. So of course, as Americans, we got to not be so selfish. That's the only thing about democracy and capitalism. You have the right to do what you want to do, but you also have the right to be a selfish jerk and not do stuff for the good of everyone else. That's the only bad thing about democracy. And I'm not going to talk about, governance and stuff like that, because this isn't the civics class. But democracy is not perfect, just like communism isn't, just like dictatorships aren't. Every government sucks, because in every government, every government requires that the people in charge have to be good. So all the dictatorships has failed because all the dictators suck. They're terrible people. They do. Find a dictator that was a great person. They didn't care about anybody but themselves. You look at communism. All the communist countries sucked because the people in power sucked. Guess what else? The democracy, we say it's so great. Oh, democracy, we all get a vote. But guess what? If in the democracy, guess who rules? The majority rules. If the majority sucks, then that sucks as well. So we live in America. It's still hungry people. So we ain't perfect. You know what I mean? So democracy isn't necessarily. It could be the perfect form of government, but it requires that the majority of the people that make the rule by majority or by rule got to be not sucky. You got people that don't even want to wear a mask to protect everybody else, right? So when you wear a mask, you're not wearing a mask to protect yourself. You're wearing a mask to protect other people from what you may be spewing out. So failing to wear a mask means you're a jerk. Honestly, that means you can't even give up. Just put something over your face. Just while you're going out, while you're in the grocery store. So that shows how people are essentially jerks, and that's how the government works. So a democracy is not perfect. We love it. That's what we have in America. But no form of government is perfect. Don't let people lie to you and tell you that. So let me get off my soapbox. So we been on here about 45 minutes. So I think that's enough time. I've gone through, at least talked about the chapters, and you guys have a whole lecture that I've already posted, so you can look at that. Of course, if you guys have any questions, you can email me or call me. As I said before, I've changed my office hours. It's in person, but that's by appointment only. So if you want to see me in person, email me or reach out to me via cell phone to let me know, and we can make that in-person appointment. But I'm not going to be just sitting on campus, in my office hours waiting on people to possibly come by. So just let me know if you have a question or you need to see me. Okay. So I think go ahead, Daphne.
Have you already taken attendance?
I did, but I saw you pop in, so I got you now.
All right, thank you.
Did you also get Sydney Graham?
Sydney Graham, let me check.
I came around like 6:07.
I got you now, Sydney Graham.
Thank
How
you.
about Chloe Jones?
Chloe Jones, I feel like I didn't get you, but I saw you come in. Anybody else? Anybody else feel like they're not accounted for?
Me.
Who's me? Jada Armour.
Jayla.
I got you, Jada Armour.
Okay, thank
And I
you.
see Ash Little got an extra visitor in class tonight. So you got an extra little person in there. Did Chanel Burrows ever come in? Let me check, make sure. What about Jada Lanier? Jada Lanier? Oh, I see you now. Jada Lanier. Say something. Are you here, Jada Lanier? Jada Lanier. Okay, don't say nothing. I see you up there on the list though, so I'm gonna mark you as here. Even though you got yourself muted, you probably watching TV or something. Courtney Shannon. Yeah, Courtney Shannon that signed in. What about LaStacia Miller? Jermaine Mitchell. Let's see. Jeremy Vick. Did you ever sign in? Okay, I think I got everybody. Cause there are 25 people in this class. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I got 5 people that didn't show up. So somebody's on here twice. But all right. Without
Can I
further,
ask a question?
go ahead.
Or should I wait? For the assignment that you said on the syllabus, it says September 3rd. Will that be posted tomorrow?
Yeah. It's actually gonna be up. Let me see. It's gonna be up at 7 a.m. So that's just so all that is my lectures for the next chapter. So I've already recorded all my lectures for this class, and I've recorded them in YouTube. So what I did was I posted the links, so I don't want to give you too much at one time. So usually we meet on Wednesdays, so every Thursday at 7 a.m. there's going to be new stuff that comes out. So my new lectures. So all that means is for next week, you need to look at my lectures for chapter 3 and 4 and read chapter 3 and 4 and be prepared to talk. Pretty much I'm gonna be talking, but if you have questions, I ain't gonna call none of y'all out like that. But we'll be talking about chapter 3 and 4 next week. So next week, just be prepared. Tomorrow at 7 a.m. my lectures for chapter 3 and 4. So like I said, go into when you sign on to the Blackboard for the class, you look to your left. There's something called Learning Units. Click on Learning Units, and it'll be up there. It's even titled Chapter 3, Chapter 4 lecture. And you can just click on those and listen to me talk some more. And I'm gonna talk about. Say again.
But for clarification, there's nothing to be turned in, but we just take our personal notes for the chapter.
Yeah, take your personal notes and study and be prepared to, I guess, discuss next Thursday. The following Thursday. No, the following we meet on Wednesday. The following Wednesday. So next Wednesday, the 9th, we'll meet again and we'll talk about chapters 3 and 4. Then the 10th, I'll post chapter 5, and I'll also post the first writing assignment. So the first assignment you're going to get is not going to be until September 10th. And that's going to be the writing assignment, but it won't be due until the following Thursday via email. So that's your first writing assignment. Now, everybody also look at my writing lecture and the lectures I posted about legal writing. Did y'all understand that?
Yes.
Now's the time to talk about it, because I'm real when I grade writing. So, if there's questions you have about writing, ask me now. My writing is my hardest, where I grade the hardest, right? So some people be like, I thought it was good, and I'm like, no, it was terrible. But I'm teaching you, right? And it doesn't mean you can't make it up, because I'll give, you have extra credit on your exams, your multiple choice. So there's always an extra bonus question on your exams. And also I'll probably give another additional writing assignment at the end for extra credit. Just something if you want to make up and get kill some points, get some more points since you feel like you might have done badly or you didn't make every Zoom call. So you want to get some points back. So you'll have a chance to make it up. But I have to let you know, and I have to really assess writing, and so you'll know where you stand. Anybody interested in law school? If you're interested in law school, say something.
Yes, sir.
Me?
I am.
Okay.
Yes.
I can't let y'all get up out of my class without knowing how to write, because that's what you do in law school. There's not a lot of multiple choice in law school. So you have some multiple choice, but for the most part, your professors are gonna throw a writing prompt, that they're gonna throw a couple essay questions in your face, and you're gonna have like 30 minutes to answer that. Literally on the 10th, I'm gonna be dropping a writing question, and you're gonna have till the 17th. You're gonna have a whole week to turn that in. That's not how law school works. Law school, you're gonna get that question. You're gonna crack the seal on that exam. You're gonna open it up, and that's gonna be the question right there. And you now have to answer that question right there. That's how it works. So this is not that. This is giving you a whole week to do like a 2 to 3 page essay. It's not even a research paper where you got to cite sources and all that crap, or write MLA, what's the AMA format, all those formats. I just want you to answer the question, and I already gave you the format in which I want you to answer, the IRAC and CRAC and stuff like that, so that everybody even understand that. You understand the basis of that essay writing, of how to what I would call persuasive essay writing. Does everybody understand that?
Yes.
Okay, so it's gonna be very important. So I'm not trying to turn you guys into law schoolers, but this is my class, so I decide how I give the how I test, right? So that's how we doing it. So you gotta do essays in here. That's gonna help you guys that want to go to law school, because you're gonna get a chance to write for someone that's been in law school and is gonna grade you, and let you know what you need to improve on. Okay, so I think, let me see, Jada Davis. I think I got you already said whether. I think I got you already. Yeah, I got you, Jayla. Okay. But yeah, I was looking at the Zoom chat. I'm trying to do all this stuff at one time. So without further ado, if there are no further questions, I'm gonna go ahead and let y'all roll. It was a joy teaching y'all tonight. Y'all be good. Take care.
You too.
Thank you.
So thank you.
All right, be good.
Thank you.
Thank you.